Dad, help!
Sharon! Oh my God! Sharon!
911, what is your emergency?
Sir,
Are you there?
what's happening?
Please, someone, please come! She was just swimming, oh God!
A gentle close to another day. But what if that golden hour, that moment of quiet beauty, holds a hidden terror? What if the place you feel safest, a tranquil lake, a family outing, suddenly transforms into a hunting ground? Imagine the unthinkable. A loved one, a child, snatched away in an instant by a creature as ancient and primal as the earth itself. This isn't just a story about an animal attack. It's a chilling reminder of how fragile life can be, how quickly paradise can turn to nightmare, and how a single tragic moment can forever alter the landscape of our understanding. This is the story of Sharon Holmes, a 16-year-old girl, in the summer evening that changed everything for the sleepy community of Sarasota County. Sharon Holmes was pure Florida sunshine, 16 years old, vibrant, full of life, and with a laugh that could brighten even the cloudiest day. She was a typical teenager of the early 70s, with a fondness for pop music, hanging out with friends, and the simple joys of youth. Sharon adored the outdoors, a common trait for kids growing up in the lush, wild heart of Florida. Swimming was more than a pastime for her. It was a passion, a way to cool off from the oppressive summer heat, a ritual of freedom. Her father, Frank Holmes, was her rock. A quiet, hardworking man, Frank dedicated his life to his family. He ran a small local business, a tackle shop on the outskirts of Sarasota, and spent countless hours with Sharon, teaching her to fish, to appreciate the natural world around them. Their bond was deep, built on shared experiences and an unspoken understanding. Frank saw a spark in Sharon, a curious mind, an adventurous spirit that reminded him a lot of himself when he was young. He encouraged her independence, her love for exploration, always with a cautious eye, always with a father's protective instinct. Oscar Scherer State Park was their sanctuary, their go-to spot for weekend excursions. It was a place of comfort, a familiar landscape of pine flatwoods, scrubby forests, and shimmering freshwater lakes. For years, the Holmes family had picnicked by those shores, had swum in those very waters, always believing it to be a haven, a safe escape from the bustling world. The park was more than just a public space. It was woven into the fabric of their family history, a backdrop to countless happy memories. The idea that danger lurked beneath the calm surface of those waters was simply unfathomable. It was a place of trust, a place of innocent recreation, a place where memories were made, not shattered. Frank, with his years of living in Florida, understood the wild. He knew about alligators, of course. They were a part of the landscape, an iconic symbol of the state. But his understanding, like most people's at the time, was shaped by common wisdom. Alligators were shy, they avoided humans, they posed no real threat unless provoked. This was the prevailing belief, a comforting fallacy that allowed families to enjoy the state's natural beauty without fear. He certainly never imagined that a seemingly docile creature, an animal he had seen countless times from a safe distance, could become an instrument of such sudden, devastating loss. He had taught Sharon to respect nature, to be aware of her surroundings, but the lessons he imparted were based on a world that was about to be profoundly, brutally redefined. The creature responsible for this unimaginable tragedy was an immense bull alligator, measuring a staggering 11 feet, 3 inches in length. This wasn't just a large gator, it was a dominant, powerful male, a true apex predator of its ecosystem. Its scaly hide, a mosaic of dark greens and browns, blended seamlessly with the murky waters it inhabited. Its eyes, positioned high in its massive head, offered a wide, predatory view, perpetually scanning for movement. Its jaws, capable of exerting thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch, were a weapon of bone-crushing force, lined with dozens of razor-sharp teeth designed to hold, tear, and dismember. This particular alligator was a recent arrival to the tranquil lake at Oscar Scherer. Alligators are territorial, but younger or less dominant males often venture into new territories in search of mates or food. It's believed this gator had migrated from a larger body of water, perhaps a river or bigger lake, drawn by the abundance of fish and the relative calm of Oscar Scherer's isolated waters. What made this gator particularly dangerous, however, wasn't just its size or its inherent predatory nature. It was its behavior. Reports from park rangers and frequent visitors painted a disturbing picture. This alligator, unlike most wild alligators, displayed an unsettling lack of fear toward humans. It would approach boats, linger near the shoreline where families picnicked, and even surface boldly in swimming areas. The reason, chillingly simple, was human folly. Visitors, enchanted by the sight of such a magnificent creature, had begun feeding it. Small scraps of food, bread, marshmallows, seemingly innocent offerings, had slowly, irrevocably altered the gator's natural instincts. It had learned to associate humans not with danger, but with an easy meal. This conditioned behavior, a direct consequence of human interaction, transformed a naturally cautious predator into a bold, opportunistic hunter. The warnings, subtle at first, then increasingly overt, were there for anyone paying attention. But in the laid-back atmosphere of a state park, under the warm Florida sun, those warnings often went unheeded, dismissed as anomalies, or even, tragically, encouraged. This alligator, once a wild animal, had been unwittingly trained, turning a natural resident into a ticking time bomb. The danger didn't appear overnight. It crept in, slowly, subtly, like the shifting shadows of dusk. Park rangers had noticed a change in the resident alligator population. More specifically, this alligator. It was too visible, too comfortable. Swimmers reported it surfacing closer than usual, lingering. Fishermen found their lines snapping and their catches disappearing. Not always to a smaller fish, but to something much larger, with a powerful tail slap. Warnings were issued quietly at first. Pamphlets were distributed, reminding visitors not to feed wildlife. Signs were posted, generic cautions about alligator presence. But they were often overlooked, dismissed as standard park regulations. "Don't feed the gators," people would chuckle as they tossed another hot dog bun into the water. The perception was that alligators were more of a curiosity than a threat, a unique aspect of the Florida landscape, something to marvel at, perhaps even take a photograph of. Internal park reports started to log more frequent, more concerning encounters. A family reported an alligator snatching their picnic basket. A kayaker claimed a large gator bumped their boat. These incidents, while alarming to those directly involved, were often seen as isolated events, easily explained away. The gator was probably just curious. It was just looking for food. No one was hurt, so no real harm done. The breakdown of safety wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow, insidious erosion, piece by piece, as the lines between human and wild blurred. The park management faced a dilemma. Relocating such a large alligator was a complex and dangerous operation, often requiring specialized teams and significant resources. And what if it just came back? Or what if another one took its place? The prevailing wisdom at the time was still heavily biased towards coexistence, assuming that given enough space, conflicts would be rare. The idea of culling an animal, especially one that hadn't directly attacked a human, was controversial. So the warnings remained, the signs stood, and the dangerous interactions continued, ignored or minimized, until the inevitable, horrifying culmination. The stage was set, not by a single act, but by a series of small, incremental concessions to a growing peril. The afternoon of August 16, 1973, began like any other balmy Florida summer day. The air hung thick and humid, the sky a brilliant cloudless blue. Sharon and Frank Holmes arrived at Oscar Scherer State Park in the late afternoon, seeking refuge from the heat in the cool, inviting waters of the park's main lake. The sun, already beginning its slow descent, cast long shadows over the water, dappling the surface with gold. 5:30 p.m. They found their usual spot, a small patch of sandy shore beneath a sprawling oak tree. Sharon, full of youthful energy, wasted no time. She stripped down to her swimsuit, eager to dive in. Frank, ever watchful, settled into his folding chair. a book in hand, but his gaze often drifted to his daughter, a faint smile playing on his lips as he watched her frolic. 6 p.m. Sharon was swimming, enjoying the cool embrace of the water, splashing playfully. Frank called out to her, reminding her not to venture too far from the shore, especially as dusk approached. The light was softening now, the vibrant blues of the sky deepening into purples and oranges. 6:15 p.m. As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, painting the clouds in fiery hues, the lake surface became a mirror reflecting the spectacular sunset. This was the golden hour, a time of tranquil beauty, but it was also the time when predators, like alligators, became most active, their forms camouflaged by the dimming light and the deceptive reflections. 6:20 p.m. Frank looked up from his book. He saw Sharon, maybe 20 feet from the shore, treading water, enjoying the last moments of daylight swimming. He noticed something else, a ripple on the surface, larger than a fish, moving silently, almost imperceptibly, towards his daughter. His heart gave a lurch. He had seen gators before, but something about this movement, its stealth, sent a shiver down his spine. 6:22 p.m. He called out, "Sharon, come closer to shore." His voice was calm, but there was an edge of urgency he couldn't hide. Sharon turned, a bright smile on her face. Acknowledging her father, she began to paddle slowly towards him. Into 6:23 p.m. In a terrifying instant, the water around Sharon erupted. There was a sudden, violent thrashing, a powerful splash, and then Sharon's piercing, blood-curdling scream. It wasn't just a scream of surprise. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror, a sound that would haunt Frank for the rest of his life. 6 hours, 23 minutes, and 30 seconds p.m. Frank was on his feet, stumbling toward the water's edge. He saw a massive, dark shape thrash violently. Sharon was fighting, struggling against an unseen force, her arms flailing. Then, with a horrifying swiftness, she was pulled under. The water churned, then settled into an ominous stillness. Only ripples remained, spreading outwards, and the last, fading sound of a desperate gasp. 6:24 p.m. Frank plunged into the water, shouting Sharon's name, frantically searching the murky depths with his hands. He felt nothing but the cool water, the chilling emptiness where his daughter had been moments before. He screamed her name again and again, his voice raw with disbelief and burgeoning horror. The silence that answered him was deafening, a crushing weight. He scrambled back to shore, his mind racing, his body shaking uncontrollably. He had to get help. He had to. The 911 call from Frank Holmes was a desperate, fragmented plea. The dispatcher, accustomed to calls of every nature, quickly recognized the sheer terror in his voice. Within minutes, the alarm was raised. Park rangers, already on duty, were the first to respond. Their radios crackled with urgency as they raced toward the lake. Ranger Miller, VO. "We got the call. Man's hysterical, says his daughter was pulled under by an alligator. Oscar Scherer, move it." The first patrol car, lights flashing, sirens wailing, screeched to a halt near the shoreline. Officers, their faces grim, joined the rangers, their flashlights cutting through the rapidly deepening twilight. Frank Holmes, shivering and soaked, was incoherent with grief and shock. An officer tried to calm him, to piece together the details. But Frank could only point, tears streaming down his face, towards the placid, deceptive surface of the lake. Medics arrived, but their purpose here was grim. This wasn't a rescue operation, it was a recovery. They offered Frank what comfort they could, wrapping him in a blanket, trying to assess his own physical state. But his injuries were not visible, they were etched deep within his soul. Witness accounts were scarce, as the attack happened quickly and at dusk. A couple fishing further down the lake reported hearing a terrible scream and then a lot of thrashing, but they hadn't seen the actual attack, only the aftermath. Their descriptions, though vague, corroborated Frank's terrifying narrative. The focus quickly shifted from a potential rescue to locating the alligator. Local law enforcement, working with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, quickly organized a search party. Boats were launched, equipped with powerful spotlights, their beams piercing the darkness. The grim reality of the situation settled over everyone present. This was no longer a search for a lost swimmer. It was a hunt for a predator and a recovery operation for a young girl who was almost certainly already gone. The air was thick with the scent of pine and lake water, now mingled with the cold, metallic tang of dread. The silence of the night was broken only by the hum of boat engines, the distant chirping of crickets, and the quiet, heavy breaths of those who knew the terrible truth. The hunt for the alligator continued through the night. It was an intense, methodical operation. Experienced FWC trappers alongside law enforcement scoured the lake, their eyes scanning for any sign of the massive reptile. They knew the gator would likely remain in the vicinity, guarding its prey, or more chillingly, consuming it. The tension was palpable, each ripple on the water's surface, each distant splash sending a jolt of adrenaline through the search teams. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, the enormous 11-foot, 3-inch male alligator was located and captured. It was a brutal necessity, a grim act of justice for the horror it had inflicted. The alligator was euthanized on sight, a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of human-wildlife interaction gone awry. The subsequent autopsy of the alligator yielded the most devastating and conclusive evidence. Parts of Sharon Holmes's body were recovered from its stomach. The medical examiner's report was definitive. The cause of death was a massive hemorrhage of the liver, caused by a broken rib, consistent with the crushing bite force of a large alligator. It was a gruesome confirmation of the terrifying reality of what had transpired. There was no longer any doubt. Sharon had been killed by the alligator. The news of Sharon Holmes's death by alligator attack sent shockwaves across Florida and beyond. It was a story that dominated headlines, a macabre fascination for the public. Local newspapers ran banner headlines: "Girl killed by gator in park, teen's tragic end." National news outlets picked up the story, highlighting the rarity and the sheer horror of the incident. There was a public outcry, a mixture of grief, anger, and fear. How could this happen in a state park? Was nowhere safe? The legal consequences were immediate and far-reaching. While there were no criminal charges, the incident sparked a massive reevaluation of park safety protocols and wildlife management policies. There were calls for increased warning signs, more aggressive relocation programs, and stricter enforcement of rules against feeding wildlife. The state park system came under intense scrutiny, facing accusations of negligence and inadequate protection for visitors. Public reaction ranged from profound sympathy for the Holmes family to heated debates about wildlife conservation versus public safety. Some argued for widespread culling of alligators, fearing that more attacks would follow. Others defended the animals, pointing to the human role in habituating the gator. Protests were held outside state park offices, demanding immediate action. Internal reports from the FWC and Park Services were meticulously reviewed, revealing the earlier, ignored warnings and incidents that had preceded the fatal attack. Frank Holmes, the lone witness to his daughter's final moments, retreated from the public eye. His grief was profound, a wound that would never fully heal. He rarely spoke about that night, the memories too agonizing to articulate. The lake at Scherer, once a place of joy, became a symbol of unbearable loss, forever stained by the memory of a sunset turned into a nightmare. The incident became a grim benchmark, a chilling testament to the lethal power of nature when its boundaries are carelessly breached. The tragic death of Sharon Holmes stands as a somber milestone in our relationship with the wild. Before August 16, 1973, fatal alligator attacks were often dismissed as unconfirmed, disputed, or simply freak accidents. Sharon's case, meticulously documented and undeniably confirmed, ripped away that comforting illusion. It forced a brutal awakening, demonstrating that these ancient predators, when habituated and emboldened by human carelessness, can and will see us not as observers, but as prey. The ripple effects of that horrifying evening changed how we view alligators, how we manage our wild spaces, and how we understand the delicate, often deadly balance between humanity and the untamed world. Today, new signs stand at Scherer, clearer, more explicit, warning visitors of the dangers. The rules against feeding wildlife are strictly enforced. But sometimes, when the sun dips low over the placid waters of a Florida lake, and the cicadas hum their twilight song, you can almost hear a faint, chilling whisper on the breeze, a reminder that beneath the surface of beauty, primal instincts lie in wait, forever watchful. And sometimes, in the quiet depths, the past refuses to be forgotten, waiting to pull you under.